Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Laurie Elizabeth Flynn. Laurie is a former model who lives in London, Ontario, with her husband and 4 children. She is the author of 3 young adult novels, First, Last Girl Lied To, and All Eyes on Her, under the name L.E. Flynn. Her nationally best-selling adult fiction debut, The Girls Are All So Nice Here, was named a USA Today Best Book of 2021 and has sold in 11 territories around the world. Her newest book, Till Death Do Us Part, is out now. Welcome.
Thank you
Laurie,
so much for having me.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here to join us today. Tell us a little bit about Till Death Do Us Part. I got so excited I started to talk over you before you even had a chance to say hello.
No, that's okay. Super happy to be here today and happy to share a little bit about the book. So Until Death Do Us Part, a woman is newly engaged after losing her first husband in a tragic drowning 10 years ago on their honeymoon. And everything's finally going well. She's moved on, but then she stumbles upon his photo, or a photo of someone who looks identical to him, on the website for a Napa winery. And she also sees him around town a couple times. She owns a natural wine bar, so she sees him outside. She sees him when she's getting her engagement photos done. And finally, once she sees the website photo, she can't write it off as a trick of her guilt anymore, or her imagination running wild. So she secretly flies to Napa to search for answers. And while she's there, she discovers some secrets that kind of lead her to believe that everything she thought she knew about the love of her life might have been a lie.
And her best friend, her best friend and her fiance are sort of like the grief. They think the grief has just gotten in her head, and she's sort of imagining these sightings because, of course, she lost him in a very tragic way. He'd sent a text message. He was gone when she woke up one morning on a trip. Sent a text message, and that was it. She never heard from him again. They never found the body. It seems all very sort of impossible. And like you can imagine, they were newlyweds, right? I mean, married just a few months when he vanished, died, disappeared. So super fun. Laura, you have a very twisty, fabulous brain I want to pick at a little bit. So can you tell us sort of the way this book sort of, how do your books, this is obviously like sounds like your 5th novel all in, 5th or 6th, am I getting that right? And second adult?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
So how do these happen for you? Like, what's the beginning of an idea? How does it start?
I guess for me, I'm one of those people who keeps like lists and lists of like any idea or fragment of an idea that crosses my brain, even if it feels totally insignificant and like nothing, I still write it down. I always say, if anyone were to ever find my notes app in my phone, they'd think I was some sort of psychopath. I've got like so much stuff in there, but I kind of just keep like a running record of like anything I find interesting or intriguing or a potential twist or something. And when it comes time for me to write a book, I kind of look to that list and I'm like, what can I build on? And what am I the most passionate about and interested in trying to make happen? And I love to start with an impossible question that will make somebody want to open the book. Like in this case, I kind of thought like, well, she's seeing a picture of this man who looks identical to her husband, but he's dead. So how could this possibly be? So I kind of went from there, and I was just interested in exploring how this could play out. Normally, I don't outline my books ahead of time, but this book kind of refused to come together the way that I wanted it to. It took a lot of false starts and attempts that kind of went nowhere. So finally, I kind of gave in and outlined this one. And then after that, it came together smoothly. So I might be a bit of a convert now to outlining. I don't know. I kind of just got lucky before with like sitting down and thinking of things that made sense as a story, as something cohesive. But this one required a little bit more effort, but
Yeah,
I
you've
honestly
got
think
it's quite
yeah.
a few fun twists in this one, so I can imagine that, like, trying to come on upon those organically would be hard. I mean, I've never been an outliner. I can't outline. I wish I could. I feel like it would be fabulous, but I can see how this one would. There's a lot of fun, got a lot of things at play here, and you wrap it up beautifully. So down to the last page, I was like, oh my God. So no spoilers. We don't do spoilers here. So you have to read the book to find out. But is it different to write? It seems like you wrote um did you write your sort of young adult books and then transition to adult, and that's where you've been since then? Or do you sort of imagine yourself going back and forth?
You know what? I might continue to go back and forth. Like I still have some young adult ideas too. Um, so I kind of like to bounce around and it kind of gives me a break from one to the other a little bit. But
Yeah,
I do think that writing young adult was a great preparation, especially with The Girls Are Also Nice Here, because one of the timelines in that book is a student in first year of college. So I feel like that was a great kind of transition book for me from between YA and adult. And then in this
right.
book, it's like entirely firmly adult, and the main characters are both in their 40s, the two point of view characters. So it's a bit of an older um, demographic for me, but I was felt like I was prepared to do that after The Girls Are Also Nice Here and having, one younger narrator and one in her 30s. So I
Yeah.
kind of went from there.
So aside from sort of the point of view, obviously being a younger demographic in the YA books, how do they feel different? I mean, or do they feel different? The sort of YA versus writing an adult in terms of your process and the effort, and sort of our adult readers, you just have to be more prepared for them to figure out more, or what is different about it?
I think what's most different for me is YA books don't have the hindsight that and the like ability to retrospective ability that an adult book would have. So they feel so immediate. And I love that
Mm,
about them because they feel very raw. They feel very immediate and every emotion is heightened. But in an adult novel, you have the ability to look back on things you've done in your past and how the decisions you've made have kind of led you to where you are. And I kind of played with that in The Girls Are Also Nice Here. That's how I knew it had to be an adult book. When I started writing it, I didn't know. But then I was like, I need the older character, and then looking back on her past self. So I think with adult books, the characters can really have a reckoning with all the decisions they've made throughout their lives.
right.
And I love exploring that. And not just the big moments like, weddings and babies and things like that, but the smaller moments that kind of make up, like in this book, in this case, like a marriage or things that
Yeah.
happen with the characters. So
Being a
I really,
mother, there's
yeah,
another point of view. I mean, for sure that changes everything, right? As you well
for
know.
sure.
That is really interesting. I haven't thought about the idea that, right, like in a YA book, our looking back is a matter of like looking back a couple of years. It's not looking back over the course of decades when you've actually like learned from something. That is it really interesting. So yeah, so you basically you could take an idea and sort of it could lend itself to a YA or to an adult, depending on sort of how you approach it. I love that idea. So okay, so this book you sort of had to outline. Was it like? How did you realize like this isn't going the way it's supposed to be going? Like, you know, what and what's your process for sort of, because I think a lot of our listeners are sort of aspiring authors who probably are experiencing what we've all experienced as published authors, which is that you are writing a book that is not going at all the way you kind of hoped it would. And sort of what are the clues that, for you that think something isn't going right, and sort of how do what's your first step in I always think of it as backing up and being like, well, something went wrong somewhere, and where was it? So how does that work for you?
I feel like I could talk about this all day because it is something that like I feel like newer writers might be like, "Oh, it's just me that's experiencing this." But no, you are not alone. No matter how many novels in, we all feel this way and we all question ourselves. I always message my friends and I'm like, "Imposter syndrome." So,
Yeah.
it is
Right.
very real. I think for me, I'm I'm always somebody who wants to plow ahead and get my word count goal. So it's hard for me to like give that up and take a step back, but I've realized lately that sitting with the silence of it and letting things marinate, it saves me so much time in the long run because I am a writer who unfortunately has to draft my way into realizing if something isn't working or not. So it's not uncommon for me to have like 40,000 words on the cutting room floor or more. And I'm also an overdrafter, like I draft way too long, and there's a lot of extraneous information in there, but it's important for me as the author. So whether or not it makes it into the book, I tell myself it's not a waste of time. So maybe that just isn't so I can cry over it later. But I think I really do when I get that feeling that just this isn't working. There's something wrong. And sometimes it's easy to pinpoint, but sometimes it's not. And those times it's not, I always just take a step back. I'm like, gotta close the Word document. Often I go for a walk, and that will clear my head. I walk and I will either listen to podcasts or just be in silence. And often I get ideas coming to me that way. I feel like if you're sitting there forcing it, it almost makes it worse. So that's sort of how I take a step back. Also, if you have people like critique partners or trusted readers, or for me, my agent is super editorial and amazing. So like I'll maybe run things by her. I also think it's worthwhile to say that when I start a book, often if something isn't feeling right, it's because I don't have the right foundation for it. Whether or not it's outlined or not, it has to have, I at least have to know the hook of it.
Yeah.
So I always write like a mini query letter before I start drafting, because that will let me go back and look at that and I'll say, oh yes, this is the hook. Is it getting lost in these pages now? Am I actually doing what I set out to do? Or have I lost the story? And then usually from that hook, I can kind of find my way back. And I also like to ask myself, like, why is what I'm writing not interesting to me? If it's not interesting to me, a reader's also going to be bored. How can I make it interesting? What would I like what would make this like come alive? So those are always things I'm asking myself when I feel stuck.
Those are actually, I love the idea. And a query letter, by query letter, you mean the pitch, like a one paragraph. This is what the story is about. Kind of like what you would put in a query letter, which I love that idea because it's a way of looking at the whole story, like, or at least giving kind of yourself a bigger picture with just that one line that is like, this is why it matters. This is why it's going to matter to these characters. This is why it's going to be interesting to the reader. That makes those. And I'm with you on the like walking away, which I think it's interesting because I do think that there's this, like, NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month in November. There's all these things that really push us to like put out words. And I've always been, I'm 16 books in, and I've always been like, get 1,000 words, get 1,000 words. And then I'm also the one who's like 50%, in the end, like 35% of the book is on the cutting room floor. So I write 150,000 words ish for a 95,000 word book, which is
me too,
so painful, right? And I think there's something I'm 16 books in, so you're getting this way before me. But I think there is something to being like, to taking that time away and being like, well, I think there's two things, right? Like some of it, and I don't know if you're the same because you've got 4 kids, and so you're really busy, and I only have 2 and they're grown up. But there's something also to being in it regularly. I mean, you kind of have to live. It's like having another child that you're sort of paying attention to, because if you walk away from it for too long, you also lose the thread. And how do you balance that with, I mean, I don't know how, I'm assuming your kids are pretty young.
Yes, they are 7, 5.5, almost 4, and 2.5. So they're young. Yeah, I don't really know how I balance it, but I do completely agree with what you say. If I'm drafting, I at least like to touch base with the book every day in some context. Maybe it's just if don't have time to write, or if I'm stuck, I'll at least reread what I have, or like make notes so that I'm at least checking in with the book. Because you're right. If you neglect it for too long, you go back, at least me, and I'll be like, what was I writing about? Like, I'm not in it anymore. So I do need to stay in it. And I guess for me, I'm like a lot of moms or parents, I think in general, trying to find little pockets of time and accepting that you might not have a big chunk of time to work in, but you can at least have those little pockets of time, like in the morning before everyone wakes up. That's when I try to write because I find that I'm less distracted because my
Yeah.
phone isn't going off. Nobody's messaging me. I can just get up, get my coffee and write and not be interrupted because I'm very easily distractible person. So,
Well,
um,
plus there's that little magic, right? There's a little bit of magic in that they have a word for it. And I'm not going to remember it, but like the time between sleep and wakefulness, there's like your brain is not engaged in all the stuff that happens the rest of the day with other jobs or children or life. It's sort of, and I'm going to be so angry at myself that I can't think of the word, but it's because it's such a magical liminal, it's that liminal space, right?
yes.
Where you're just not quite awake, but you're awake enough. And I think so many people find that amazing. And if I could get my butt out of bed early, I would so be so proud of myself. But I never have been able, I've always been the like at night kind of person. And then the other thing I wanted to say, because I think it's true what you said about, walking and thinking is there is that time, and I don't know if you do this too, where you're right when you're about to fall asleep. Do you ever keep a notepad by your bed? Because I think that's another magic, or your notes app. I think that's another magical time when your brain is sort of falling. So there's times between wakefulness and sleep, I think can be magical for problem solving as well as for being creative.
Absolutely. And my thing is, if I have an idea at night as I'm falling asleep, I force myself to get out of bed because my phone is plugged in on my desk. I go and punch it in there because I will never remember it. Otherwise, if there's been a couple times where I'm like, oh, I'll remember it in the morning. I never do. And then I'm like, oh my God, what was that? And it's lost. So
Right.
it's
It was
super
so
sad.
brilliant. And now I can't remember. Right.
Right.
I always kept a notepad by the bed. And I'd write in the dark so as not to wake my husband. And then like in the morning, there'd be these words that were kind of, but I could still kind of make out what I was doing. But I think it's really important to take, it's like you said, like in a busy, busy life, there are only little pockets of time. And if treat them with, if you respect them and honor them, then you can create a whole book. So so basically you're writing between, like you said, in these little pockets of time. And what do you feel like, in some ways, maybe that's really good for the book, right? That you kind of don't, I mean, I don't know, have you ever had the opportunity to sort of write a book in a more sort of with fewer children or in a more focused manner and found it different, or has this been your existence with writing?
Yes. So my first young adult book I wrote before I ever had kids, and I wrote it during National Novel Writing Month in November. And it was the best thing I could have done for my writing at the time because I had written two books before then, and they had taken me months to draft, which is normal. But for me, I was just sort of being in like my writing was just being influenced by my perfectionism. So I wasn't able to really put words out, and I had no, like, I wasn't trusting my instincts. I was just kind of, second guessing everything, write a sentence, delete it, tell myself it wasn't good. And then I would stew in my own, perfectionism for a couple of days. And, then I'd go back to it. So it just took so long. But with Nano, it kind of made me write really fast with that goal, 50,000 words in a month, and get rid of my inhibitions and not really care if the words were good or not. And that was very transformative for my writing. I kind of approach writing sessions like that going forward. Now, granted, I've not like ever since then, all my books have been written while I had kids. So I've had limited time, but I still approach every writing session like that, where like I'll often set a timer just for 15 or 20 minutes and be like, for this 15 or 20 minutes, all I can do is write. There's no going back. There's no erasing. There's no Googling. There's no Instagram. Like I'm just going to get these words out. And that's the only way that I can draft is quickly now because I will lose momentum otherwise. And
Yeah.
I worry about the mess later. And it's actually very liberating because
Oh,
you find out, you come up with some really cool stuff. I mean, some of it's a hot mess, but some of it's really, I find like I will come up with some stuff and I'm like, wow, that kind of came out of nowhere. It's because like you're kind of leaning into your own instincts, I think, and you're trusting the process and your own creativity and that you're the one who knows your story. And my subconscious often surprises me. I don't know if you have that too when you're writing and you're like,
yeah.
oh, cool.
That's so smart. You're like, look at you go, girl. You're so smart.
Yeah.
I think it's actually, I think that is another sort of thing that I don't know that new writers and even experienced writers really appreciate the fact that I think getting words down, any words, like kind of, I sometimes describe it as vomiting, which people are like, there's nothing really that you pull out of vomit, but you know what I mean? Like just letting it all out on the page. And then, like you said, worrying about the mess later, because at least you've got something, right? You've got something to work with. And it's so much easier to navigate and words that exist on a page than a blank page, right? I mean,
Yep.
and the 15 minutes, they do that whatever method it's called where
Pomodoro.
yeah, I was going to call it tomato. That's why the Pomodoro method, where you do whatever. I think it's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 4 times or something, or maybe there's a break in between. I can't remember. But I just do 15-minute sprints, because I find if I do 4 15-minute sprints in a day, for me and I have, as long as I sort of go into it knowing approximately what the scene is going to be, that's really freeing for me. And I feel like I can be really, and then like you said, the non sort of timed part is when you go back and kind of have to clean up the mess, but
Yeah.
that's like less stressful, I feel like.
Yeah, once you have those words on the page, I always remind myself, I forget, like everyone's probably heard the quote, like a first draft has only one purpose, just to exist. And I totally believe that. I remind myself of that like 100 times a day while I'm drafting, because sometimes I'm like, wow, what am I even writing? But it's just a reminder, like, got to keep going. And I don't get bogged down in research while I'm drafting. I'll add brackets and be like, add details here, because otherwise I just won't move forward. And moving forward and getting to the end is that most important thing at that stage, I think.
I think that, and somebody else said a good book isn't written, it's rewritten. And I think that's true too, right? Like, I think,
Oh my God, yes.
right? Like if and I think people expect to sort of like, they read a book by an author they like and they're like, "Oh, it's so beautiful. Nothing that I write comes out this way." Well, that is not how it looked on the first go. I can guarantee it. And anybody who says otherwise is probably not telling the truth, or they're the one in a million. So we don't even want to talk about them.
No.
So tell us. So the Till Death Do Us Part is set in a winery, and I have to say it was really, because I grew up outside San Francisco, so that whole area, Napa, it's all really familiar to me. And I noticed you've got a wine poster behind your head. Is that something that you know about? I mean, or did you do the research for that, or did you just drink a lot of wine while you were right? I'm just kidding. So how did you sort of come upon that as a setting, and sort of the information you knew about wine, or the characters know about wine, I should say?
So I think I kind of hinted earlier, like this book took a long time to come together. And originally we tried out like a couple other settings that just weren't working. And my agent and I were kind of brainstorming, like, what would be a really interesting setting? And we kind of thought of like vineyard. And I was like, oh my God, I love wine. And I would love to set a book at a vineyard. And like how I thought it would be such a cool setting for a thriller. And like as soon as we started talking about that, I was like, oh, this totally fits. The pieces started to click together. And for me, like I didn't know a ton about wine, except that I have enjoyed drinking it for a long time. I love it. I'm a big wine drinker. So, but for me, that was part of the fun, like was researching all about Napa and all about wine. Like I found that to be so much fun. And it was interesting. So the first draft of this book, the first draft with this setting that I drafted very quickly, I wrote like over half the book at a writing retreat over a weekend. It was like crazy, but I added so many words in revision. This was like the first time I underdrafted, I think, but I added a lot because it was all the details about the wine, and that all took a lot of time. And I found it so interesting and I think that's the key now going forward. I'm like, I find the research to be such an interesting part of it. I'm always looking for unique settings or different things that I'm interested in, because it's sort of selfishly like I'm also interested in it. So I want to learn about it so that my characters can speak about it, or that the book feels authentic. But it was so fun. And I definitely did drink some wines while while researching and while revising. It was fun. So it kind of got nice. Like I would sit there with my glass of wine at night and revise. So it was kind of a nice little ritual. And
Yeah.
I just absolutely loved the research part of this book.
That is, well, it's super fun. I've never revised a book without wine, so I get you on that. But
It's
it was fun to
necessary.
read about like the organic wines and how they're different, because I think that is a growing, as a, I love wine too. So you're starting to see more and more of that. So it was really kind of fun. And the characters are very knowledgeable, which I think is important for authenticity and, and all of it. And I do love, I'm obviously one of the things we talk about as women, for women is the sort of the women in the book. And I don't want to talk too much about it because I think there's some aspects that I think are important to keep a secret until you read it, but that the victim's mother is a main character, and obviously the main character, and I think and then there's a third woman who comes up, gets involved, and I actually think, or a fourth even. Now I'm going to just start to babble because I'm not going to give anything more away. But I think those relationships between those women and their relationships with their husbands and children also, like, super well done and super interesting. And I I want to explore it, but not we can't. So we're not going to explore it. But as when people read this book, I think that is it's something that you do really well. Those those female interactions, just like the girls are also nice here. I found the same true. So, um, tip my hat is all I want to say about that.
Thank you.
So, okay, so tell us, Lori, where to find you. Can you tell us what you're working on now, or is it sometimes people are like, no, or are you just like, give me a break because I just finished this book and it was torture?
No, I'm literally always like working on the next thing or,
Mm-hmm.
looking to, even when I'm working on something, I'm like mentally cheating on it with like five other like mini ideas that I'm
I
like,
love
oh, I'm
that.
gonna write you all. So um, I'm working on my third adult novel right now.
Okay.
So I'm not really able to say much about it, but it's
Fair.
another kind of in the vein of Till Death, like another suspenseful, romantic, um, family drama type, I guess. Like that's sort of what
Mm-hmm.
I love writing. So like
Yeah,
secrets, drama, relationships, all that stuff. That's just what I love. So expect more of that, I would say.
that's
And twists,
fantastic.
lots of
And
twists.
yes, which are, yeah, yes. I think that is a pretty shocking thing in this book. So I think people will really, really appreciate it. If you're somebody who loves an unexpected twist, then be prepared. So tell us, Lori, where to find you. Where can people follow you online and um, read more about your books and all that kind of fun stuff?
I'm mostly just on Instagram now. So I'm on Instagram at Laurie Elizabeth Flynn, and my website, laurieelizabethflynn.com, has the information about the events I'm doing and things like that. But mostly I'm on Instagram, and I'm probably on there too much. So
I know, right? We all feel that. It's sort of like a love-hate relationship with social media,
yes, so
obviously.
true.
I know. We could go on forever about that too. Well,
Yeah.
everyone, you have to pick up Laurie Elizabeth Flynn's Till Death Do You Part. It's out right now, just out. And also, if you haven't read The Girls Are Also Nice Here, that's a super fun one too. And I'll have to check out your YA, which I also love. It sounds like that's under L.E. Flynn, Flynn. Obviously, if you're listening and not watching. And we will have a copy of this book to give away. So stay tuned for that. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So fun. Everyone, this is Killer Women with Laurie Elizabeth Flynn, and I'm Danielle, and we will see you next time. Bye.